Hey everybody, my name is Nick and welcome back to my channel. So, in this video, I'm going to be showing you a new library that I have come up with. It's written in JavaScript and it is called oHTML, or Objectified HTML. So, to start off with, I know I haven't posted a video in a pretty long time, but I've been busy with lots of stuff. I'd like to plan on making new videos as frequently as I can, so yeah, I'll try to be making new content as much as possible. Okay, so back to this library. This library will allow you to get JavaScript functionality in HTML. Now, the reason behind this project was no particular important reason, but I thought it would be a fun project to start. It's not a huge library, it's a single file, and you import it by just like this. Add a script tag, set source to whatever the name of the library is. In this case, this is the path. So, and then we also set it to defer, so we let it load after everything else. Yeah, so let's kind of go over some tags that this library introduces. The first set of tags here would be defs tag, or definitions. So let's start off with this first style of definitions tag. To declare a variable in HTML now, you can use this defs tag. You can set the scope to either local or global. Set it to local for now. A local definitions variable will allow you to define a variable only able to be used and recognized in this HTML file. And I will show you in the library how that works, how it differentiates between local and global variables. The set property after the scope property is the variable name, and of course the value is the value to whatever variable you're defining. And you just close the tag, and that's how you define a variable. To retrieve that variable, you again set its scope and just say get and then the variable's name. So in this case it's test. That's what I declared it as. Now the scopes have to match. If the scopes don't match and the variable is not written into the either local storage, which is how global variables are stored, or the local array of variables, and those scopes don't match, it will not return a value. It will usually return a null or undefined value. So that's kind of it for the definitions variable. Now, to retrieve these values in JavaScript, I created this test.js file, which is loaded here. Ignore this for now. So to retrieve those values, you have to wrap your code in this window to unload function. That will make sure that everything is loaded before you try to access objects and properties as a part of the oHTML library. But let me show you in the oHTML library. So what you have access to is these storage pools to retrieve global variables. Since local variables cannot be set or retrieved in a separate JavaScript variable, you have to make sure you're retrieving a global variable. So let me show you how to do that. So for example, I am defining, like I said, this test variable, which will not be defined as a global variable. So let's define a new variable. Let's scope to global. Let's call it YouTube test, and set the value equal to hello. Oops, and then close that up. So I have now set this variable called YouTube test, and the value should be equal to hello, and that's defined now. So let's try to retrieve that. Let's say it's going to be equal to the storage pool, and then we can use these two these functions on this object. Let's use get to get the variable. Again, it's called YouTube test. Now, if I were to console log this get value, let me actually make this a different value so you can see it better. Let me call it test for YouTube. As you can see, if I refresh this page, this is kind of an example of the whole thing here. There it is. It's being logged here. And if I refresh, again, it's going to keep logging there. Don't worry about this stuff for now. I will show you what all this other stuff does, but for now, this is what we're worried about. You can see this is the test for YouTube. We're logging that out. we're logging that right here. So that's just an example of a global variable scope and how to define that and use that later. Alright guys, so that was, again, how to define and retrieve global variables with this library. So, just as a side note, this will be available in the description below to a GitHub link where you can, create forks of this, issues, anything that you would like to do with this library. It's completely open source. Feel free, please make changes. Again, this is not a very serious library. I thought it'd be cool just kind of to, as a proof of concept, I guess. All right, let's get to the next type of tag that I created. The next type would be these for each tags. Now, if you're familiar with JavaScript at all, you know exactly what this will do. It's a little bit different since, of course, this is HTML again. So let me, again, show you how this works. So you define the for each tag like so, open it and close it. And the properties that are required is the type, iterator, and as properties. So let's start with the type property. This will tell the for each loop what to wrap the values in. So for example, a div will just wrap the values in a div. If I were to say maybe strong, all of the values that are echoed out onto the page for every object in the array will be strong, it will be bold. Assuming that's the type of tag that you were to set that as right here. Any HTML tag is valid here. I do some security checking, so you can't use script tags. It's not perfect. I mean, this is, like, again, this is not a developer use this in your production environment. I mean, this is meant to be a proof of concept. So again, keep that in the back of your mind. Don't use this in like some production environment. This should be just kind of play with at this point. So the next property would be the iterator property. This is the array you're going to be iterating over. So let me go back to this test file here. This is the iterator, or the array that I'm iterating over in this example. Any array in JavaScript will be accessible if you define it like this. And then this as property will be what is defined for every object in that array. So I'm just calling it this because I mean it makes sense. And then to display that, you use this each tag with the property name of the as property here. As long as these are matching, it will show, and you'll be fine. And to show an example of that, again, I'll bring this Chrome page back up. But what I was just showing you is right here. As you can see, these are the different pies that are being displayed. And again, they're being actually logged here too. I just have that in the library just for, again, this is a testing library. You can see all the logs. It's there for developers to look at and see if it's working correctly. Okay, so back to the for each loop here on the page. Let me just give you a little example. I'll move this over here. Let me kind of just adjust here for you. So if I were to do something like this, let me give you some more room so you can see a little bit better. And I make this a strong tag, for example. So you can see these are all now bolded. Div, again, these are just what are kind of what you're wrapping the values in. Let me get the elements so you can actually see what's happening here. So let me open one of these for each up. As you can see, this each pie, as you can see, it actually opens, and all of the values are filled like this. You're given the class name as the as property. The ID is going to be the value of each object in the array, as well as the actual value printed to the display. So just to show you a live example here, I'll change pumpkin to YouTube test. As you can see, now it's YouTube test. Just kind of what it does. Now again, like I said, this is not checking. It should replace spaces with maybe underscores or something, because this is not a valid ID. These are two IDs now. It's just one of those things that, again, this is just kind of an experimental library. But anyway. So let's move on. Can we move on? Yeah, let's move on to the next type of tag. So I just have 2 for each examples here. That's why there's 2. The next one again is, of course, is the if statement. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. What it's going to do is take the query. So this testing query is a function defined in JavaScript over here. As you see, there's testing. Returns false. So what's going to happen with this is none of this will run. Anything between the if and the else will not run, and if it's false. If it is false, then the else statement will run. The way I'm doing that is literally just setting the display attribute in CSS to none, and it just toggles that between the if section and the else section. So I can show you that on the example here. So you see how it says else is run, right? If I were to say maybe not testing, like so, let me bring this up so you can see it. You can see if is run because it's the opposite of testing, or oh, here we go, there we go, or maybe I do return true. If is run, false, else is run. You know, that's kind of, I mean, it just works like an if statement. But to show you how it's actually working in HTML, let me drag this back over so you can see the elements being updated in real time. This is the if statement that I'm seeing. As you can see, it's else is run because it's false. If everything in the if condition is displaying to none. That's what I'm doing here for now. It's nothing special. It's nothing fancy. It's just the style display property. And you can see else is display because this value is returning false. And you can even do expressions in here. So like 1 equals 1, that's true. 1 equals quote 1 is true, but if we use a triple equals, it's false. So yeah, it's real JavaScript in here, so I just use this to show you can use functions. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the if statements. That's pretty basic. So moving on to switch statements. These are again pretty self-explanatory if you have used JavaScript for some amount of time. It works similar to an if statement. So what's happening here is, if you don't know how a switch statement works, I'll explain that to you. You define the switch tag and close it, and all of your cases and default value go in between. So what happens is you're going to switch on with this on property. You're going to switch on whatever some value is. Some value is defined in here. So you can see some value is a string called testing. This could be anything you can switch on. You can switch on integers. You can switch on strings. Certain values you cannot switch on, but I'm not going to go into depth on what you can and cannot do. You know, you should kind of already know that if you're looking at this library. If you don't, that's okay. You can kind of look it up and see what's going on. But for everyone that knows what's going on here, we're switching on this string called testing. So we're saying use this value. If that value is equal to value 0, equal to testing, or equal to value 2, do its respective function, or display its respective HTML. So these are pretty much big if statements. So we're saying if this is saying if this the value of this variable is equal to that, then do this, and so on and so forth. If none of these are true, then the default value will run, and I will show you an example of this running. So as you can see, testing is shown. This is the switch statement, the first switch statement. There's actually 2, but I'm just going to show you this one for now. Let's change the sum value to value 2. So we'll change the value to value 2. Value 2 is going to show up, and just to show you that this is actually working, we change this to value 2 is working. See, that's working. So now if I set this to value 0, value 0 will show up again. Self-explanatory, testing will show testing. Now if I do none of these, like no values equal to the on value, again, that's the default response right here. And again, this is all customizable, and you can change everything to however suits your needs. Yeah, that's pretty much how the switch statements work. And the last thing I have is a work in progress, because they're not very useful yet. I will be making it more useful. I have some ideas for this, but for now, this is what it is. So, they're function declarations in HTML. They're a little bit jank. So let me just, I'll go over how it works, how to define it, and I will explain to you why they're kind of jank. Again, so use the function tag, that's what I called it, of course. You set the function name to whatever you want, and if it takes any arguments, and you use the args property and specify each property, or specify, sorry, each argument with a comma delimiter, and then you can write your JavaScript in this function that will represent the code that will be in this function. So how am I, okay, let me show you this. So normally if the script tag was shown somewhere else, it will throw an error because name and age technically are not defined in JavaScript. They're just in this arbitrary args property that the console on a browser doesn't know exists yet. It's not part of the scope yet, so it doesn't really know. To stop errors on the console, you should say, for example, something like that. Whoops. So what I'm doing is using this no module property, which is not a custom property. This is part of HTML and JavaScript. This is not something I am defining. If you do not know how the no module attribute works, here's a good explanation. I mean, if you don't know how modules work in JavaScript, I'm not going to explain it because it's kind of long and winded, and I don't want to explain that. Pretty much in a very vague short term, this no module property will stop the browser, stop the console from showing reference errors, meaning name and age are not technically defined in JavaScript, but it will ignore that for now because it's not a module. Okay, so that's out of the way. Yeah, so these are again self-explanatory. What's happening? You have a function with these arguments, and this is what you're doing with your arguments. Yeah. So yeah, I just have two functions defined here, and I will show you that. As you can see, we're right here. I have to show you this in the console. As you can see, you go over here. You see how this is a test anonymous function, and then it has these two values here. Well, this is this console log happening, and then this is the value. This is a test anonymous function, and then the two arguments. So let me show you how that's working. In the window on level, as you could have seen before, I had these. Excuse me. I have these function pools. Now, if I go to my libraries, you can see a function pool takes a run function of this object that takes a name of the function with an args array. So what this means is you can type an unlimited amount of arguments into this function, and it will append on, and then it will apply those arguments in order to whatever function you're trying to run, which is why I'm able to add arguments like this. Yeah, so that's how the functions work. Let me go to show you how they're defined, because it's a little bit weird. Again, this is all open source on GitHub if you want to take a look at this. But yeah. So what's happening here is I am looking for function tags to begin with, finding the name and args attributes of that tag, and then I'm checking if it has any child nodes. If it has any children. If it does not have children, meaning there's nothing in there like that, then there's nothing to do with that function. There's nothing to define, so nothing should happen. If it does have children, we're going to loop over each child, each node, and then we're going to set the display to none. We don't actually technically have to do this anymore, because I had this written a bit differently, where I made custom script tags, but I wanted JavaScript syntax highlighting So I use script tags. This is technically can be commented out, but I'll keep it in here for now. It then checks if the tag name is script, which that child node is. That child node is the script tag, and it checks if the oHTML, excuse me, the oHTML is in the node attributes array. If it is in the array, which of course it is, then we're going to make this script tag act like a oHTML script tag instead of a normal script tag. We then take this JS definition here, and we start by surrounding whatever the inner HTML of that node is, which is all of this, or for example this stuff here too. We're going to surround that in a try catch. This is kind of just for testing for me now. I was seeing if I could stop console definition errors, but shoving that all in a try catch pretty much didn't work. But keeping it in a try catch is actually better anyway for an upcoming feature that I'm working on, so we're keeping it like that. And then I'm also using this escape entities function, which what that does, if I go up to the top here, we have an escape entities function here. Oh, sorry, unescape entities. That's different. Unescape entities. So what happens is there's character encoding for different characters. For example, let me show you what gets encoded sometimes. It's like less than signs get encoded because of HTML tags using less than and greater than signs. So we know that this is already not a HTML tag opener or closer if it's less than or greater than. So we're going to revert the and LT back to its normal character so we can parse that as JavaScript and not get weird errors being like, what is and LT semicolon mean? Because JavaScript doesn't know. That's what this function does. That's just for making sure that there's no entity encoding happening in the JavaScript. And then after that, we're just applying those arguments, if there is any arguments here, to this func pool, which is defined in here. It's just an object array. So, func pool here. What happens is the function pool, we append on the name, and then we set the value. Where are we? Back down. We just set the name and the value to a new function with the JavaScript and its respective arguments. I'm not going to go over the code for everything. Just wanted to go over the function stuff because it's not done and there's some issues with it. But you can, again, like I said, look over this code on GitHub if you want to make changes. If there's issues you want to create, again, fork it if you would like. Let me know if there's any changes. But yeah, I mean, I thought it would be a cool idea just to kind of play around with. But yeah, if you guys have any changes, if you have any remarks, you can send me an email. Again, create an issue on GitHub. Yeah, anything like that, I would be happy to take a look at something, or yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you guys enjoyed it, I would appreciate it if you liked the video. I would appreciate it if you would star the repo on GitHub, or watch it maybe too. Yeah, it would help me out a lot, and yeah, cool. I appreciate you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. I will hope to have a video out sooner than 2 years. Again, sorry about that for not posting frequently. I will try to have videos up more frequently. But yeah, I appreciate you watching, and I will catch you in the next video.